In our Data Masterclass podcast, data leaders share their unique stories. In this episode, we welcome Mahmoud Yassin, Senior Data Manager at Booking.com. He reflects on how he established a successful data marketplace and shares his secrets with us. Let's welcome your host, Alex Borek.
Hello, my data friends. Happy New Year. Welcome to a new season of the Data Masterclass podcast. And we will start it off with a big bang. We have Mahmoud Yassin, who's a Senior Data Manager at Booking.com and who was previously also lead data architect at ABN AMRO Bank in the Netherlands, who's a very innovative bank actually in the data space. And he will talk today about building the data marketplace enabled by metadata. Welcome to the show, Mahmoud.
Hi everyone. Thanks a lot for having me, Alex. I'm really proud to be here. And hi, all Data Masterclass fans.
Very good. And, we met actually in Stockholm at the Data 2030 conference recently, a few weeks back. And I actually really enjoyed your talk on data mesh and data contracts and so on in the environment of Booking. But, it sounds like you're very, very deep into data management. That's sort of your thing. Tell us a bit about your journey and what got you there and what experiences you made.
Happy to share that. So I started as what is known as data engineer now, but back then it used to be called ETL developer. And that was back home in Egypt. So I started in the telecommunication world. So dealing with millions and millions of calls, or what we used to call a CDR. For the people in the telecom, they would quite relate that. And then after that, I realized, doing the ETL part is cool and everything, but business intelligence is also important, because then you need to know, or you get to know how you can get benefit of the data rather than just storing it and, transform it and so on. Then I jumped into the business intelligence space, and that took me to Asia, where I spent around 6 years, again, mainly in telecommunication. So I used to work in the Gulf region for that period. And at that time, big data was kicking in and Hadoop was on top of mind of everyone. So I got to learn a little bit about Hadoop and big data and what it brings to the table. Especially at that time, also the types of data got increased, the variety, the velocity, and so on and so forth. So I created my own cluster at home, really commodity computers, plugging them in, installing the fancy services here and there. And then I realized that's not going to work. Then I went to AWS and did the EMR cluster, but I forgot to turn it off. So I got a very expensive bill. And then after that, realized,
how much did you have to pay?
It was, luckily there was a limit. It was $100 limit. So it reached it, but usually you should consume that in a month or so. But, that's also good learning. And then after that, I came to Europe and I joined as a big data architect in, one of the leading banks in the Scandinavian region. So Nordea. But I was based in Poland, so I spent around a year there leading their solutions around detecting financial crime unit, where we wanted to stop certain bad transactions and detecting certain anomalies and so on and so forth. But it was on top of Hadoop ecosystem. After that, I got the opportunity to come to the Netherlands, which I gladly accepted, and I worked for ABN AMRO for around 5 years. Again in the big data space, but then become a domain architect. Building data marketplace, the topic of today, among other stuff. And I think this period is where data governance got crystallized in my mind, and then applying it, seeing the impact, and then iterating on it, what really helped me as well to develop my governance and data management skills. And now I am harvesting all of that and trying to do better data at Booking.com. And I've joined Booking 1.5 years ago, approximately.
Great. And well, I mean, you have really such a wide range of experiences.
Yeah.
I would say you're not the oldest person here so far in the show, but it seems like you already went through quite a lot of things.
Thanks a lot. I would take it as a compliment, but yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Definitely. And, so what about maybe the difference between the different environments, and not necessarily only between, Booking and working for a large, quite innovative bank, but maybe also, the journeys beforehand, What were the things which surprised you along your way? Or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between, in general, highly regulated businesses like financial industries, insurances, healthcare, and so on, in comparison to the other, let's say, less, regulated, let's say, businesses, including e-commerce, which definitely is regulated, but not as critical because of the business also model itself, and you're dealing with people, money, of course. So there's definitely the angle of regulation, which kind of, in a way, I never thought myself that I'm going to confess that and say that publicly, that I kind of understood why the regulation exists a little bit now after I left the bank. Because when you are working for a bank or a financial industry, you think, oh yeah, again, another regulation, those boring stuff, and you have to comply to them, etc. But once you see a less regulated, then you get, okay, you realize that they also help in a way, right? So the core intention is not to block you or to make your life miserable or, block development or innovation. But the core value is that they kind of trigger you to do better. And in our space, better data management. And that's a clear difference, I think, between the industries. But nowadays also a new kind of type of regulations are kicking in. So Digital Market Act and the M&A and Digital Acts and AI Acts are coming anyway. So
EU AI Act
and the AI,
the most recent.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. So it is regulations coming everywhere, but I kind of realized, or kind of, just crystallized that why they exist. So nowadays I feel they are for a greater good. And if you take it from that angle, I think it's a different perspective.
And I guess, also the operating model of a bank is very different to an e-commerce.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I had a similar journey like you, I worked in a large bank, Volkswagen Financial Services, before I moved to Zalando. And
like these banks exist like hundreds of years ago, right? I mean, the system is quite known, and the core financial system is not that, like, let's say, different than ABN AMRO, than Dutch Bank or any other bank. It's the same, even I can argue it's the same old technology that we all know and no one wants to touch, which is like mainframes. But if it works, it works, right? So there is not much, innovation around the core itself of it. But in e-commerce or in digital born companies like Uber or Booking.com or Zalando, there's no common ground. You cannot, for example, you cannot find a commercial data model that fits Zalando, and then you can put it Booking and it will work. In banks, you can do that. In telecom, you can do that because the entities are known. The major departments are known. The relationship between them. And I remember at Vodafone, we used to use a CLDM model. So I think it was developed. I mean, it's an enterprise model that you just buy in, plug it in, insert some data in it, and then you have a fully functional warehouse, right? That can't happen, in my opinion, in nowadays, like in the modern new kind of businesses.
So what would you say is also a difference in how such different environments actually leverage data? Where would you see the biggest differences?
Well, I think it comes to your data strategy, right? So data strategy of the company in general defines the amount of usage and how you would use your data. So, for example, if you are dealing with a defensive or an offensive strategy, that's a different thing, right? So if it's more defensive, then you're always like, you know what, I need to govern my data. Innovation comes later, AI comes later, and, let me just keep the light on and so on. But if you are like offensive and pursuing opportunities, that's a totally different one. And then keeps it challenging. You adapt new technologies and you introduce new risks, right? You can expose yourself to attacks because you're opening up, you are, expanding your region and your horizon, etc. So for me, it doesn't matter which business, but it's more or less about the strategy. At ABN AMRO, you can say it's a bank, but we were quite offensive, right? We were pursuing opportunity, trying to innovate, etc. But maybe another bank can be, let me just keep my financial license up and running, do the reporting. I have happy customers, and that's it. So I feel it's more on the strategy rather than the business itself.
And then I believe, of course, that Booking.com is a company that always goes for growth and for expansion. And
we don't have a choice. right? You get eaten if you don't pursue opportunities. The advancement of AI, for example, it's already in our DNA. So that's why, we are in a better position, but still we want to innovate more. We want to create more stuff. And if you follow also Booking.com, we kind of recently announced about our AI trip planner, like the ChatGPT-like experience where you can chat the similar way that you do with the ChatGPT, and then we've integrated our machine learning model with an LLM model to give you the ultimate experience where you can book through chat the entire thing. And that's something that our customers need. So we have to get or stay closer to their needs and offer different ways to do the business.
Yeah, that's and I think also the speed in bringing something like that up. I mean, LLMs are not so old.
Yeah.
And I think you see that the major, e-commerce companies are bringing out these kind of customer facing applications rather sooner, than later.
Yeah. It's also the need, right?
Time.
So if you compare how many times you open your bank app, right? Mm-hmm. It's not that as often as, for example, especially if you're working in an international market like Booking.com, and we face millions of requests a day. So, it's handy, and people wants to do, or certain services, is in the tip of fingers of people. So you need to be closer to what they like. So nowadays, a lot of companies, they do business through WhatsApp, right? So that's why WhatsApp business. That's cool, right? If people like that, fine. We should adapt. Otherwise, if you stay okay with your classic mindset, that maybe you lose certain also threshold of the population, specific genders even, you can argue if they will like your service or not. So this also has to be tailored to how you segment your customers and where they like to interact and what's the means or the most comfortable way for them. So I think the key message is you have to be closer to your demand.
What would you say are the most important kind of data sets in such an environment? When you're working in e-commerce,
what's the most important data?
Data sets. Yeah. What is the data? What do you say it's at the core of data in such environments, such e-commerce environments?
Definitely the customer data, of course, that is the core business. Among next to it, the transactional data, where the business is running when you make an order or you make a booking. These are the crown jewel and the core systems. And so we have a who part, and then what they are doing, and definitely why they are doing it is also important. So in our business model, there's a lot of critical data, the customer data, transactional data, partners data, because booking is a middleware, like a two-sided marketplace. So for us, a traveler is as important as the partner who offers the hotels or the accommodation or the services. So these are crucial. If there's a mismatch in the data, then you have nothing to offer. So you have to really keep these two in the core of everything.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. That's really great to understand a bit more. What kind of data is essential for booking or for e-commerce companies like Booking, because I think it's very similar in other e-commerce companies. So when you have such data, there's a lot of data. What do you think is important when it comes to data management, data governance?
Yeah. I think for me, one of the most, I call them capabilities, right? So data quality is a capability, data lineage is a capability. But the one that really stands out for me, and somehow it is still kind of underrated, is the metadata management capability, because it has great potentials, and I feel like we haven't used it fully to extend where you can do amazing use cases in the span of, cost reduction, better optimization of your processes, and also monitoring and so on and so forth. So for me, metadata management is one of the key capabilities that we should really focus upon if you want to have truly data-driven companies.
Well, I guess most, if you go to your board and say, "Hey, I want to invest in metadata," it's probably not, probably not the number one priority. If other people say, "Hey, let's invest into customer experience or into higher revenues or better conversion rates."
Yeah.
So what are the, let's explore the whys of it. You mentioned some of them, but I mean, maybe let's go into them and unpack them a bit. So what would we say is the most important why, and let's understand it a bit better.
I think data governance and management in general is a hard sell, right? Because it doesn't have a direct ROI, right? So return on investment is kind of, not that tangible if you compare it to something else. But what I would usually, let's say, advise is, maybe data quality is good to sell here. So, if you even make it more, in one of my previous experiences, I've done it like that. So I did a little bit of investigation of one of the reports that, let's say, one of the leaders uses day and night, and investigated a little bit around it and got the lineage of it. And then through some discovery and discussions, I figured out certain mistakes on the logic of that report. But no one knows because there was no data contract, there was no data sharing, there was no metadata management, lineage was not visible for people to investigate, there was no KPIs to monitor that. So it's also hard to detect that. But once you bring that real example of this dashboard that this person is using and then challenge that, then realize, okay, then I've been maybe doing or taking wrong decisions all this past period. That's not cool, right? Because you expect numbers to be correct, especially with senior people to drive the company in certain directions. Then you can have like a discussion. And based on that, okay, what if, we have a data sharing and that will make things clear as a contract between a producer and consumer. Then you can introduce data quality. If there's data quality rule that checks that this number, let's say, should always be positive, cannot be negative, then we would have eliminated that error from happening, and even more further, fix it at source. Then it will never happen again, not just for you, but for others, and so on and so forth. And then you can have a conversation, and then, now I realize why this is important. And then with a proper strategy and proper, let's say, break down the big, gigantic governance program into modules and how you can roll it out. Then you get, I think, the momentum, and then there must be some KPIs to measure success and so on, and then report on that and even empower leaders to see the impact. So how many, if you're talking about ownership or stewardship, what's the percentage of stewards that we have in the company and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
So let's dive into the topic of metadata for a while. What do you think is the most important metadata, and why do you think it is important?
Let's start by maybe defining the types. So we have, as per Gartner, 4 types: business, technical, operational, and social metadata. Right? So business metadata, anything goes to the dimension of the business side, the descriptions, why is needed, the purpose of that data, etc., etc. Technical metadata is the most appealing, and everyone understands it: the columns, the tables, the user-defined functions. And this is usually what people mentally relate to metadata. Operational metadata is the logs that get generated while certain data pipeline is running or certain processes is running, and all the operational excellence, our operational processes that happens while doing data. And social is the one that gets into the dimension of who is accessing this data. So which department you're coming from, what kind of a team you're working in, is it analytical team, operational team? These kind of stuff you can also play with them if you know those parameters. And out of these 4, I think operational metadata has great potentials if you know how to use it, because there are like many use cases that you can play on if you understand how your data pipelines are running, how many minutes, hours is taking to run, what is the server utilization, if there are any peaks, off peaks, and using this data. And if you manage to find a way to blend it with business metadata and technical metadata, you have a great, let's say, potentials to do great use cases. And we can discuss about some of them maybe later also in the interview.
Great. So let's maybe think through, let's dive here, but into this even more, because I think for many people it's very abstract, still. Mm-hmm. I think those are the types, and operational metadata. I agree that it has a huge potential because you can basically measure that straight away quite easily, and you can plug it in, and you can understand maybe different parts of that operational chain. So what have you seen, what you can really build up from that, in practice that can really deliver tangible business benefits?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So let's make it practical, right? So assume for a moment that we managed to get these types of metadata somewhere, right? Like, let's call it a meta lake, or as I often write about it, metadata lake, right? So it's a lake just for metadata. And then all these types of metadata are being stored. Let's see like some of the potential. So what you can do is, and actually it's a real use case that I've worked upon before. So we got all the metadata out of operational metadata out of our business intelligence tool. So it happens in that case to be Power BI. So imagine you open the Banadora box of Power BI and got all their metadata and then stored it in the lake. And next to it, you have the connection strings that these reports are accessing which database, right? And what kind of user, etc. And you already have that metadata of these databases in your lake. We assume that from the beginning. And you have also a dimension from business metadata or from business point of view that all the departments of your organization, all your Active Directory data and so on and so forth is being imported into that lake. And then what you can do is something like that. So what if you can pick up one of the most important dashboards that you want to just see something about it, right? And then through operational metadata, you get to know all the sources that this dashboard is using and see through operational metadata, how many minutes or seconds or hours does it take to do that refresh on daily basis? And based on that, does it make sense or not? If this is a high critical report, maybe that's an incentive for you if it takes too much time to work on it and dedicate some engineers to improve it. Other use cases would be if you have and actually it's a real use case, we wanted to see which dashboards and reports are being active, even like people are using them. Because nowadays you can just publish a report and then forget about it. And using this operational metadata, we got a list of the never or always refreshed data, but never being accessed by users. And that was like 50% of the entire cluster. Then you create a small team with a smart project manager. And then after 3 months, this is all deleted and wiped. Half of your cluster is gone. Less data, less governance, less emission, more sustainable. You're hitting the nail. We did something from a security point of view, like, okay, if there's this financial report that's so important, and sometimes with the new, especially cloud services, which, sometimes they open stuff by public, let's say, in the beginning, like, the famous incident by ADL Asgen 2, it's public unless you make it private and so on. And you never know if you don't nudge the ground. So you can do like, okay, I want to see who accessed that report. And then through the business metadata, the people who access that report, and you can you can actually accurately say from which department they are. And then you will be surprised to see some interesting stuff. Why, let's say this person from legal is accessing this dashboard. Maybe it's good, or maybe there's something weird in it. And maybe it's just, an access that everyone got without even asking for it. So it really, you can play a lot. You can even start from business metadata. You can see which reports are mostly used by certain department, because the department and the users and the consumption and the operational side of the game. And then you can do interesting stuff. You can even, if you have a marketplace initiative, like we're going to talk, you can suggest certain data sets because that the similar people like this person are using these kind of dashboards, for example. Then, it can be good used in a proactive approach. It can be used for auditing purposes. It can be used for reviews. It can be used for performance excellence. It can be used for many other use cases, but it only works if you have these types of metadata together. And that is where, of course, complex, not easy, but once you have it, then you just need to speak to it.
Super cool. I think that this was like a marathon of great examples of the power of metadata. I really appreciate that. And I was actually, I thought in every example, that's a great use case. Oh yeah, that's a great use case. And,
but we can talk for another podcast about potentials. But that's why I said metadata is underrated, right? So there's tons of potentials, and I still stand by this statement in it, but it's also hard. And maybe we will cover that in that discussion around the marketplace, but because also technologies are not that mature there. Each technology produces its own footprint, and we don't have as a community a standard way of sharing metadata, and that's painful, right?
Right. Well, so let's jump into the topic of data marketplace. And,
Yeah.
for a long time, I thought that data marketplace is a marketing dream rather than a reality. And I think you were, and yes, there are examples of data marketplaces out there. And I think many companies have something like that, but not really well done. What in the preparation of this podcast, you talked a bit about, how you build a data marketplace. And I was really astonished because I said, yeah, that's what people really mean when they talk about the dream of a data marketplace.
Yeah.
So let's explore that a bit. What is really the core idea behind the data marketplace?
Yeah.
In
I
your
think the
opinion?
marketplace is really, really very trendy, even word nowadays, and it has great potential also as a business proposal. But the thing, as you said, like many companies are doing it, but I think most of the companies, at least the tools I have seen, they are doing it from their own angle. Like, for example, Snowflake nowadays has a marketplace, but it's only to integrate the products within Snowflake. But, usually in a big organization, you have more than just one database and more than one the data platform, and think of complex organization, sky's the limit on what we have. So what drove us to think of a marketplace? Actually, multiple reasons. First one is like it's really hard to every day to come to business teams and business people, especially if you are thinking of a modern data architecture like data mesh or so, that hey, you need to be an owner, you need to be a steward, and then what does this even mean? And there's a lot of resistance, which is logical, right? If I am in a business side, I would be like, guys, let me alone, right? I have other perspectives. So from that angle, people also, you lose the interest of people, and without them, you cannot do anything. So we wanted to provide a simple, easy, and one-stop shop, literally one. So I can argue in all our businesses, in order to search for the data, you go to export. In order to request access, you go to Y. In order to see some ownership, you go there. If you order to register assets, you go somewhere else. And then you can end up with 10, 15 different tools. They are not connected. They are done for a great job for sure. They built to do something good, but they are scattered. And we wanted to bring all these stuff under the hood. We don't want to duplicate them or get rid of them, but we wanted to create a layer on top that simply you go to it, let's say Zalando.com or booking.com or whatever. And then from there, you start searching, finding, requesting access, seeing the data, seeing the documentation about it, maybe checking the data model, the conceptual model, the logical, the physical model, checking the data quality scores per data set, per elements, per attribute, maybe register your needs, approve some stuff. So we wanted to create that entire experience in a single portal. So that's what we called one-stop shop of data needs. And that is what drove us to marketplace. And once we tried it out, it really helps because people, oh, I love this. Okay, now I don't need to go to this tool to approve access and this tool to request access and so on and so forth. And the most important reason for me is if you got that kind of crowd, managed into that, you can also, from a data governance point of view, shield your own processes because, like in order to request access, I'm going to impose here a process that requires certain approvals. And then I'm going to import the data owners and the data steward of this data. They need to click approve or reject or justify. And if there's a PII or a critical data element or a key data element in the data, I know that already from the metadata. So then automatically I'm going to spin off an approval for a privacy assessment officer or even just an assessment that lead to a CISO wizard or a privacy expert. And then this becomes natural. You don't need to write a document and then first go there, second go there, drop email to compliance, get approval, and then all these complex trees, we build it within the system. So it's like, guiding the community as well to do better governance without saying it's governance, I would say. It's just like they just click next and then it works for them. It works for us. So everyone is happy. And then the company is, also protecting itself by doing better governance.
And basically it connected to several systems underneath to make that happen. And not only like proof and so on, but also technical systems where the data was residing.
Definitely. So we had two, or actually out of my experience, like you can have two patterns there. So for example, for the marketplace, you can create a data quality, or at least we build it like that. So you can register a data quality, check, right? So you build it there, but actually the marketplace will do nothing with it. It's just an interface to funnel it to an API towards whatever technology that you have in your company. And that, of course, then you need to copy or get the right parameters, but that's easy. Then it goes there and it goes through whatever data quality process that you have. And then you get the signals back of the data quality tool that you have. And then you analyze the signals and then show it in the marketplace. So it's like, you hand me something, I take it away, do whatever magic under the hood and bring the results back for you. So for the business people, they haven't seen the data quality tool, or they dealt with its complexity and its backend and APIs or whatever. And similar idea was data access management, similar idea was data sharing with data lineage and data modeling tools and cataloging tools and so on and so forth. So it's a surface on top. And here, the pattern that I was discussing, so either like a direct pattern for APIs, because then in that example, or also another example where you can create a Jira ticket, for example, then you can do direct integration with Jira. But also there are certain type of requests that has to be stored locally in the back end of the marketplace. So for example, workflow management. So we had to, create that so that a data owner can approve or reject, or if you want to propose a term or a definition. So there are certain parts of the marketplace that had to be stored locally. And for the excellence, and of course, business lineage is also something that we were interested to store and show at a later stage. So so either direct integration, or you have to manage your own certain services at the marketplace locally as well.
So, maybe we take a sip of water and and everyone can also simply now take in what you said, because I think that was a lot of information. And maybe a very simple question: who was the target user group for that market data marketplace that you built?
The primary target is business. So business teams, I think they are the teams that need the most help. Because, technical teams, IT teams, they at least know what we are talking about, and they know data governance with a little bit of education, a little bit of enforcement, they will get things done. But it is meant for business people and of course, plus IT, but mainly even every screen that we've designed, every button that we've decided to put which color, because it's also like a product development. We only did it, or actually solo did it from a purpose, from the angle of a business team, and then even they evaluate every part of it, and we get feedback from them how to use it, and then improve from there. And I think since most of the companies now are thinking of modern data architectures, like data mesh or maybe parts of it, then you will see that there's more pressure towards business teams where the data, or the domains as is being called in the jargon, to do more data. And we felt like that data marketplace is a good way to engage them and empower them, if I can say that.
But are we talking now about, let's say, business users really, or like BI users, or rather analysts who would then do their own analytics based on that data? And how would you serve the data? Would it be sending out sheets, or would they have access to a BI tool, or to a database, or to the data lake?
Yeah. So definitely we had different personas for the marketplace. So analysts, for sure, business analysts, PI developers, anyone actually and simply with data needs, right? Mm-hmm. So the experience would be something like that. You go there and you register your need. Okay, I need to build this report, right? Then the system asks you, or the marketplace asks you, okay, what kind of report are you looking for? What's the retention of it? When do you want it to be refreshed? Some kind of warm-up questions, and then together the use case that you have in mind. And then after that, okay, you can, once you register that, you can shop for the data, right? So then you can see your data, the available data products or data assets, whatever is called in your company. And then you can, okay, I want this customer name data set along with the customer address, and along with the transactional data, because I want to build a churn model, and these are important for me, right? And once you request get access to this data, an automatic data sharing agreement process will spin off. And then based on the selection, what you've selected, let's say notifications and stuff will go to the right owners. Hey, let's say Alex, Mahmoud wants to use this data for the purpose, and he wants to use these columns, for example. Do you agree or not? Then, assuming that everyone agrees, then you have a data sharing agreement. Then we move to more of how this data will be accessed. And the way we've built it, so we had a modern data platform where all the data is being stored centrally. So in that sense, it was a central data store. And since the marketplace also integrates very well, it's actually the same department with the department that owned the platform. Then we could build an easy data access policies that can give you the right ACLs or the right permissions to access the data. Because also when you come with a request, you register the application that you want to consume the data from. It can be a business intelligence tool, but it can be a different application, or it can be a domain data store if you have such a, let's say, component in your company. And then we know the application name, the IP address, where it's being registered, and how the data will be transferred. You choose also like push or pull. Do you want to access the API pattern? Do you want to access the batch pattern? So there's also some layer of technical questions that need to be answered. And once everything is settled, then we do take care of the permissions, and then you should find the data at your disposal to start your analytics.
Right. Wow. Fascinating. And what were the goals for these initiatives? Did you have certain KPIs for that, or certain, like, maybe not necessarily KPIs, but business goals behind that? Or
I mean, data governance was at the core, right? So even maybe we didn't need to say it out loud, but we wanted to know or to improve the let's say, mess around data access, right? So basically, you find out easily that there's no access controls and people can access data even, if you have an agreement, but is this agreement is being respected for a specific period or not? So these kind of stuff, it's really hard to come and say, tomorrow we're going to stop access and you need to request everything from scratch. So we use it as well as a way to, ingest or integrate this governance into the daily life of data people or data roles in the company, so that it becomes a natural habit. Because data culture is the hardest among everything, right? To change the culture, I mean, we can talk about that like for an hour, but yeah, how would you make people data aware? That, I think, was the psychological aspect of the marketplace as well, because you offer them something has to be, of course, accurate, fast, smart, designed in a well, have a UX thought in mind. You have UX engineers. We had really, really big teams building this up, not because it is that complex. It is definitely complex to a degree, but also to cater for the adoption of people. And definitely we had all kind of reports to measure, the adoption of it, how many people came, how many data sharing agreement, and even we make those exposed to people. So if you go to a data set and you want to know the popularity of this data set, why not? Let's show it to you. So you get a sense if this data is kind of popular or not. If you have two data sets, one is being used 100 times and the other one is never used, that gives you an incentive. And this is more. And then by integrating data quality KPIs, you get to know also, if you want to know even what data quality rule ran against this record and how many false positives and what are the confidence degree on it, that's all transparent. And that transparency, I think it's hard to find nowadays. So the main goal and the KPI for the adoption, governance, and we had all kind of KPIs around, again, data shares and data access management and lineage and other governance capabilities. And we used to monitor them on a weekly basis.
And what did you show to users? When you would look up a data set, it did have the marketplace provided a search functionality to find the data.
Definitely.
And then once you found it, what would you see? What would be the information that you would see there?
Yeah. So it's kind of three main sections. First one, you would see like the business metadata, back to the metadata story. So who created this, or who's responsible for this data? Who's the data owner? who's the stewards. And if you have multi-stewards like business and technical, like who are those people? So you get to know certain names next to the data. And then the business description. And then next to it, how would you organize the data? So thinking of your data domain. So it comes from finance, and within finance, it comes from sub-department 1. And if you measure, for example, a certain maturity of data set, you can say like confidentiality rate, integrity rate, completeness rate. So we used to have like CIA rating, something that also tells you about the data, and then bunch of, let's say, organizational structure. And next to that, let's say once you finish that section, you will get to see some components around what is the data model of this data set, like the conceptual model, the logical model, and the physical model behind it. What are the business terms and definition in that data set? How popular is it? So certain KPIs you will show it has been used 10 times for 10 use cases, and it is part of 100 data sharing agreement. And it has an overall quality of, or you can use also like the signals, like it's a green, orange or red, or you can say like, okay, it's 80% out of 100. The threshold is 80 and it is above 80 out of 100, and you can do it in a speedometer or other KPI. And then you can also get to know how many data quality issues this data set has, right? Because you can pretty much integrate with Jira and then bring that information. Then the people like come in the first and the second section, they get to know everything. And when they want to jump into the details, they go to the third tab where the elements are being mentioned, the attributes, the column types, the data types, more on the technical metadata side. Then you have everything in one page or multiple page, and you can navigate through it. And of course, if you are a persona that has actions, you get to see like an action tab where you need to approve certain requests or reject certain stuff. And you can also add some documentation and some kind of a data story or a data narrative as well. Something that we envision that we can create like a sort of a notebook later that people can use to get start or kickstart their data. But that I think I left before building. So it's really one great example of everything around the data. And in a matter of seconds, oh yeah, this is good. If a data has high quality, low ratio of quality issues that are being registered against it, and it is well known, there's also maturity level of the data set itself, like registered, published, ready for use. Then you can use all these parameters to triangulate your data need. And then if you like it, then you can go for the request access part.
Great. And you built it all yourself?
So that was an in-house project indeed. Big one, but yeah.
How on earth or why on earth did you decide to build it yourself?
Definitely, this was a company decision as well, right? So we had a very great and a great believer in the marketplace, like our chief architect, and he definitely supported that. And without his support, none will happen because that's costly. You needed to secure a lot of funding and, the vision itself and so on. So we were lucky to have, let's say, our chief architect and let's say CDO is onboarded fully and supportive for this initiative. Mm-hmm. And we researched the market and we couldn't find that all these aspects integrated naturally in one tool, but it was painful, right? So if I would redo it again, and if there's already some emerging technologies, they already have a solution, I would rather adapt it because you had to deal with a lot of choices, a lot of architecture also choices that you never thought of. And then you have to change, and some features we failed to do and we had to reiterate on them and rebuild them. And not every, I think, company has that leverage of failure and, improving. So, but in our case, that was like 4 or 5 years ago. So it wasn't it was kind of, a long time indeed.
Before it got popular.
Exactly. Even before data mesh itself get popular.
Amazing. And how did you approach it when you started this project, and you started to implement these things, what were critical things on the way,
we started actually with two people. Mm-hmm. It was myself and another analyst in the team. And then those two people grew to become around 50 plus people over a span of 2 years. So we've learned a lot. We did like a lot of interviews. We spent a lot of time to identify the personas of this application, right? What they would be their needs. We clustered them. We interviewed them. We gathered all kind of requests from them. And then what really helped us is that we didn't jump right away in building the portal or the marketplace. So we would rather build a wireframe or a mockup, right? And then a clickable thing through Figma, for example, and then pick this up, validate it, and then get feedback and iterate on it. And once you have like a version that people would kind of agree on, consent on it, then you leave that one and move to the next feature. And then by that approach, we were able to, involve business as early as possible, business users, business persona. And meanwhile, we increased our staffing. We had, a small team, 1, 2, 3, and grow up to a level where we had like dedicated front end teams, dedicated back end teams, dedicated team for the metadata lake to store all these kind of complex metadata together, a team to get the metadata out of systems. So we call it metadata connectors, like how you can extract all these in metadata from like the example I gave, Power BI or other services. So, and then, to create that synergy between all these teams and then keep developing features. So it was really, really a high tempo and feel fast and true agile, I would say.
Wow, fascinating. And I guess you must have learned a ton on the way.
Yeah, I stepped into areas that I've never thought. I mean, I'm a data guy, right? So, but there you need to deal with software choices and software technologies and, certain architectures. Do you need to do like a micro front end or how would we structure our APIs? What kind of, platform we're going to use, technologies, also look into the future of the company where we want to grow. So it was a nest, but I also had a great team and people who really supported this. And together we managed to build something very truly inspirational, I would say.
How hard was it to handle those different types of metadata? You mentioned that the metadata lake that you built up for that. And, my experience with working with metadata from different systems is it's great when you stay within one system. When you put that into a metadata lake, it's becoming very, very messy because everyone has a different format. I mean, it reminds me a bit of IoT data, when you take Internet of Things data out of different systems. Every hardware has proprietary data formats that make it very difficult to analyze it.
I think you're hitting the nail, right? So all of that is achievable, but this piece of the puzzle was the hardest, I would say. So we had to come with a meta model, and we had to kind of think, okay, like objects, right? So you get an object from a system called Informatica, right? And that object has a type. That type could be a workflow, but could be a table, or could be data quality, let's say EDC, or could be whatever technology. Same for if you go to Microsoft, we have a service called Data Factory. So for us, we don't call it Data Factory, we call it an object, right? An object of Data Factory. It has these kind of components, and we mandate in our model that you have an in, an out, and something in between, right?
Right.
The in is the source, the out is the target, the in between is the logic. So the scanners that we adapted, and we didn't build that ourselves. Some scanners we had to build it. So, for example, for the old systems like mainframes and the legacy stuff. But then for the other stuff, we leverage other technologies connectors. So, if you use any data governance tools like Colibra or Informatica, EDC, or Purview, or the Unity, or whatever, they have already some connectors to certain technologies. So we would leverage their technology and let them scan those databases or those systems, and then through some APIs, get that output out of them, put it in a landing zone where we convert it into that meta model that we wanted to have. And then that means the data goes into the kind of the gold layer where the marketplace has a direct access to it. But it's really painful. And that's why also bring me to what we discussed is we as an industry, and I think Data Masterclass is approaching, leaders and stuff. And I think we need to really, really build up a standard around metadata. And that standard needs to be kind of respected by all the big companies. So whenever you create a service, then, there is a metadata piece that I want to create, and it has to follow that standard. Because nowadays, each tool has its own way and you cannot like challenge them. They need to keep their own, stuff running, but they have their own different models. But no one cares about that lineage or the metadata standard.
Yeah.
But if we have it, that would be totally different, let's say, a realm, because you don't need to reinvent that and figure out a mapping technique and build all this complex, let's say, architectures I'm talking about. But I hope, sorry, go ahead.
No, you hope?
I just hope that someday we can find a way to create that global standard, and then we stick to it. That would be totally cool.
Yes, that would be totally cool. And I was wondering if open metadata or open lineage as well could be, a format that can help us here.
Yes.
I saw that a lot of vendors have started to support it, and
yes, we also had to evaluate it as well, and I think it is really in the right track. And and I spoke with the founders as well. One of them, I think, he's an ex-Cloudera as well. So they really have that vision of also unifying that, and it needs all the community support to support it, I would say, and then one day we can have that standard.
But I do think, like what you built up was really before the time, I think now a lot of companies started to go such a way, and I think data fabric is also a big buzzword, but basically in essence, it's an open, it's a metadata lake and its core. And I think I love how you described, basically it was more than a data lake. You created a metadata data warehouse where you did some data integration and mapped it to a common data model, actually.
Yeah, so the metadata lake was exactly like a normal lake. Yeah. We had all the principles and all the standards that we had that we used to give while building any lake, totally applicable for it, because at the end metadata is also just the data at the end, right?
Yes.
So you do data quality, you do data cleansing, you do, CDC, all the stuff that applies for the normal data. But indeed, the beauty is that, once you have that done, there's unlimited possibilities. And even if you want to push it further, if you just put an AI on top of that, then you unlock a lot of things. So people can come to the marketplace, a version of a marketplace like ChatGPT. Hey, I'm interested in this use case, and then boom, okay, out of my metadata, I suggest that. Do you want to use it? And then it becomes more easy to do all of these kind of components that I spoke about using the help of a machine learning model as well. So, but they need to feed on data, and that data persisted in the metadata lake. Yeah, that would be the next level for me, I think.
Great. And, from what you described, where it sounds also that once you had that common data model, you could do data lineage much easier because you always had an input and output.
Definitely. Yeah. One of the core benefits was data lineage for sure. And then even not just classical lineage, like technical lineage, but you can also do business lineage. If you want to know, for example, how this data asset went through which processes, and then you can put which departments and which team and which roles are being accessing it. So we label that as business lineage. And of course, among the classic, let's say, lineage where you can get to the column and the table. And for that, I won't say that we solve it that fully ourselves, because there are better tools to do that, right? So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So with a proper integration with the technical lineage tools that you have in your ecosystem, you can also use it. But then our goal was to offer that through the marketplace. Right. Because again, it's a one-stop shop. But if you really, really want to go into the details, because, if you expand a lineage graph of a very popular column or table, it can be super messy. So we said maybe you can go, to the tool and continue from there. But at least the generic ideas and the main leads, let's say the level 1 layer, should be in a marketplace. If you need more, you can go with a hyperlink to the appropriate tool that handles that. So that's also really, really, to the point. Data lineage was one of the core foundations around the lake as well, the meta lake.
And did you manage to do the lineage across the systems? And how? If yes, how did you do that?
Yeah, so this is really hard because how to connect systems to systems. So we actually the approach was to do it like first, and also my advice would be don't try to boil the ocean, right? So we labeled certain systems as critical and less critical, or maybe you can think of it from regulatory point of view or whatever. And then what we were really good at is scanning one system and another system, and that part between system to system. Yeah, so you can also do that a little bit manually at the beginning, but we had some ideas also how to build that, but it's also hard to translate how the data landed to other system, and without having that standard of metadata standard. If that exists, that would be different, and that would be easy to build. And we even had an initiative that, okay, how can we embed or create a standard where when a software engineer builds any piece of code, then they must tag a certain piece of lineage into it, and that can be pushed or pulled. We were debating which one to do, and that goes to the metadata lake. So it is sort of, we labeled as proactive metadata. And if you have that, if system A gets data set and then they tag that, oh, I got this column from ERB system and I used it in our CRM, that's it. Then that link is there, and then you can fill out the gaps yourself. But that's also, I would say, quite challenging, but it's also doable. I didn't do it, so I didn't reach that level, but there are also ideas how to build that as well.
Yeah, and I think, up until now, I think this is still a challenge, like you said, also because of the interoperability or the lack of interoperability between metadata of different systems, particularly different vendor environments and ecosystems.
Sure. Yeah, that's very much true indeed.
But you did build a marketplace. It was up and running. It had a lot of traction.
Yes.
What were the benefits that you saw out of it once it got live and improved over time?
Well, I would say the ease of how people can do data now, like using such a service in between. As I hope now, after I explained it, it's not easy. It's super complex, but we made it for the users. It's very easy, clickable. And we even adopted at a certain point of time the idea of crowdsourcing. So you would see like features like, you know what, you browse this data set and you think it's missing a data quality rule. So why not propose it, right? And it just goes as a proposal. It won't be effective immediately unless the data owner sees it. And then it was very popular because people felt, oh, okay, I have a stake in this data, so I'm going to propose to add a null check here because in my use case, I think it's important to be this field to be non-nullable. And then the data owner, oh yeah, you know what? That's correct. Approve. Gets approved, then it gets integrated, and then next day they get to see the quality check and the results. So the way or how you made it easy for people to do data, I think that's the greatest thing or the greatest value out of it. Among all the governance and check marks and having a happy regulator, which is quite impossible, but at least you can show them that you are in control. That's itself is a big plus, I would say.
So what was the resonance and feedback of the users?
So we were like getting all kind of, usually you have also always frustrated users, like that's always the case. You have people who are enthusiastic, you have people who suggest and engaged. But I think the more we listen to them, the more features that if it makes sense, we build it up in the next quarter or two and give them like plans and even a Jira ticket where their things will be done. I think then they have the buy-in. So I remember some feedbacks like, hey, you made it so easy to export data. You guys made it so easy to request access. You guys made it so easy to understand the characteristics of this data instead of jumping into Excel sheet and figure out where this column is and copy paste it and go somewhere else, call an API and get certain. So these kind of things has been, removed from the picture and people loved it. And I think it's great. Everyone was happy at that point.
Wonderful. Wow, what a great story. And I think that you were really before your time. I think a lot of companies still until today, struggle to be where you took your company. So what advice would you give to other people, to other data leaders who are starting off on this journey or who are not as far, maybe some things which you can, maybe go faster because of your experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I hope that what I discussed with you, and I think you led the discussion very well, can also give them a sense of complexity, but also the gains, and can be also a way to sell that story to certain people to maybe start such a journey. I would say, because you mentioned something very right, that maybe we start a little bit earlier in the journey. Nowadays, I see a lot of technologies that are investing in such an ecosystem, I would say, of data. So I would evaluate that and see which technologies I keep, I keep reading, I keep seeing, I get involved in evaluating some of these kind of products from time to time. But I'm not gonna mention names here, but I would say keep an eye on the emerging technologies. Metadata, never ever compromise it. It has great potentials, and invest in learning about it and getting to know what you can do with it. And if these are among other stuff, like the data quality is definitely one of the core stuff that you need to build upon: master data management, reference data management. So it really completes the wheel of data management, like from the Dhamma book or any other guide that you adapt. But metadata for me is the key to even achieve greater results, I would say.
And maybe the last question on this journey towards the data marketplace that you built, how many years does it take?
That's the most common question. Yeah, so I think the entire, I would say, of course, because if we're gonna build it now, it's different. But at that experience, it took us around 2 to 3 years, I would say. But then rolling out feature by feature, some features we really failed on them, like data sharing, and we had to rebuild it again with a proper understanding. The UI itself, we started with, let's say, maybe not the best looking UI, and then we had to use a better version. So I would say, if you really have people who know what they're doing, it can be done in a year. But yeah, it depends on the skill set and also the vision that you have and what features you want to enable first. Certain features can be enabled faster than others and so on. So
great.
But
wonderful.
I hope not to scare people, but it's really wonderful if you have such a technology, because it really makes life easy. Data governance, data management people will be super happy to see how they can control the flow or the people, or I don't want to say the herd, but let's say how people deal with data. From the other angles, you make it easy for consumers and producers to interact in a way that is different than involving an IT person in between or calling a manager or escalating, because everything is transparent, everything is searchable, findable, and you create this kind of trustness between them. And then you will gain a lot of trust and adoption, I would say.
Great. So maybe, we can wrap it up with the question, where do you think the future of metadata and data marketplace is going in the next years?
Oh, that's a big one. For the metadata one, I really hope that it becomes part of any data strategy. So any data leader, CDO, and a leading role, I would love to have a vision around within their, let's say, data strategy around metadata and data lineage and those type of stuff. From marketplace, I see it spinning off like rocket, really, really a lot of tools and technologies are adapting them. But I think when they realize that they need to not just locally for my own products, that's where it will get certain attraction, because you need a tool to be a wrapper, I would say, on top of many other tools, not per se removing them, because we didn't remove any tool or take over any tool. We just built a wrapper around them and then use these tools to guide the organization to do better data management. And that's the key fundamental part. If that's in the mind and the heart of the people who build these kind of things, marketplace, then you have a really great product that people will love and adopt.
Great. Yes, that's a good vision. And let's build that vision and work with the
sure.
ecosystem to get
through the community,
done.
Through the data masterclass for sure. Yeah, why not?
Thank you so much, Mahmoud, for sharing your really inspiring story, of getting it done, getting a powerful data marketplace into place to leverage the power of metadata, that creates real benefits, that is, beyond not only theory, but also beyond just playing around with metadata, but really building something useful for the business users out of it.
Exactly. Thanks a lot for having me, and I hope that you and the listeners and all the audience enjoyed it. Happy to stay connected, and thanks a lot. Has been a great pleasure actually to be here.
Great. And I hope to see you then at the Data
Definitely.
Masterclass Europe
Yeah.
in May, where you
2024.
can maybe give some
Sure.
live answer to some live questions of the
Sure.
audience
Happy to
for
be
this
there
great
for
topic.
sure. Berlin is actually one of my favorite cities, and you definitely. So we will figure it out. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thank you so much.
See you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Boric Data Masterclass, where great data journeys begin.